Welcome to the Heartwork podcast, where we delve into stories, struggles, and triumphs of entrepreneurship, leadership, and personal growth. I'm Dr. Sarah.
And I'm Dr. Marisa. We're here to guide practitioners, entrepreneurs, leaders, and those just navigating the complexities of life on a journey of discovery that explores the dance between passion and strategy, heart and hustle.
With candid conversations, insightful interviews, and plenty of laughs, get ready to uncover how leading with heart can transform your business and life. Let's dive in.
Welcome back to another episode of the Heartwork podcast. Today, I am super honored because my father, Bud Bauman, is here with us, joining us, because truly I've always wanted to sit down and have this done more formally, but I grew up hearing multitudes of incredible stories of my dad and the work drive and ethic that he has. And he really created this successful business career as an entrepreneur in the corporate world and has worked with companies like Cigna, Dow Jones News Corp, PSFS Bank, Horizon, Blue Cross Blue Shield. He was a consultant. He did advising in technology and business, climbing from managing just himself to also then managing upwards of 500 employees, 375 offshore employees. He would start, manage, and complete $180, $250 million of projects yearly. I would always look up to him and his wisdom and how he shared leadership skills, development, the art of networking. And I truly believe that I have embodied a lot of that through his own wisdom and skills passed down. So excited to be able to share this with our audience and community. Thank you for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Well, good morning, Marisa, and good morning, Sarah.
We're excited you're here.
Well, thank you for having me on.
Yeah. So first, I do want to start by giving our audience just like a overview of your career and really how you developed and leveraged your skills to work your way from bottom to the top and really how that developed what you wanted from your life.
Sure. Well, I'll date myself, I guess, in this spot because I ended up graduating Rutgers College, part of Rutgers University, back in 1981, and I had a mixed kind of emotional bag of what I wanted to do when I was going to grow up. You know, everybody before you went to college, you decide what you wanted to be, and I didn't know who I wanted to be. So not knowing what I really wanted to do, it was kind of hard because back then, you know, you had to have a choice when you were selected to college and what you wanted to do. And I always was in love with science fiction. So Star Trek was one of the things that just, you know, fascinated me so much. So I wanted to get into something about technology. So I went to Rutgers with the idea of, you know, getting a computer science degree, but I actually went more towards business administration, finance, economics, and then I took a minor in computers, and then I also heavily took a lot of courses in theater appreciation because deep down inside, I really want to be an actor. And never panned out.
I got it from somewhere.
I know. I was going to say, Marisa.
I could never memorize lines. That was the hardest thing about acting. I'm very good at making things up, but acting, you can't do that.
You're improv. You're good at improv.
Yes. And it's a little bit about who I am. You start, when you go to college and you graduate college, et cetera, you start figuring out who you are, but you still don't know. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you just don't ever know, which is the fun about, you know, this whole journey of life. So when I graduated, it was a tough time. Back in 1981, we were kind of like in a mini recession. That's when you had to get in gas lines and odd and even days. And so this company called Cigna Corporation, actually it was INA at the time, before it merged a year later, was my first and 67th company I applied to. And I was hitting the streets for 5-6 months after I graduated, trying to get my way in somehow into some company. And there wasn't very many junior level positions because when you have a recession, the first thing they cut is all the lower level positions in the company. So finally I got a break and I got into the INA at the time, and I was in a management leadership development program, but in a technology world. So you were studying COBOL and the programming languages, but they were preparing you to be a manager of a technology group. And I really liked that aspect. And then the concept was that you had to read like all throughout the 3 months and learn the programming languages. And then when you were done, you had to go into rotational programs every 6 months. And that hit me. I was like, oh, this is great, because I I get bored fast. I can't stay in one spot. Like if you ask me to be a manager of like an assembly plant or something, that's not me. I knew that already just by going through college and experiencing life in college. So, the first year or so was great. I was in my first rotational assignment, and then my boss didn't want to give me up.
Mm-hmm.
You're not rotating. You're too good. We want to keep you here. And one of the things that, you mentioned, I'm an entrepreneur in a corporate environment. Early on, like I said, I get bored, I get complacent. Anytime there was a difficult job or something that people were struggling with, I said, I'll figure it out. Let me do it. And I quickly built that kind of reputation that was like Mikey with the Life cereal. If give it to Mikey, he'll eat anything. And that was Bud. It was, we were having really difficulty. We can't figure this stuff out. And I would raise my hand and volunteer. Now, one thing a friend of mine said is by doing those things, you probably can't make it worse. So if you go and tackle a tough job and you solve it, you're a hero. And if you don't, okay, they're going to find somebody else who's going to solve it. A nice try. They pat you on the back, go try. Mm-hmm. Well, I always seemed to solve it, which was really the first sign of, kind of my formulating the fact that, all right, I can't be on something for a long period of time. I got to constantly move, constantly change. And I started thinking about, what drives me is making a difference. And I'll talk about this when we get to personal values, and making a contribution. I wanted to not just make a difference, but I wanted to make a contribution and continuously learn. So after I got done, that year, people said, well, aren't you supposed to rotate? So finally somebody said, okay, we're going to move Bud around. And there was, when it was 11 of us in this program and there was only 10 openings. And I was the one that said, okay, just take the other 10 because I don't want to do the same thing. I don't want to go to another department and do the same programming. I want to do something different. So they found another area where they just couldn't figure out how to get this computer system to work. It was a distributed computer system. It's like the IBM 360s. I'll talk a little technical geek here. Stuff. There were mini computers, basically. Instead of the big mainframes, there were mini computers. And they had people struggling to try to figure out, how do you get all these mini computers to just solve little problems instead of big problems? And so I tackled that. And that was a lot of fun. And I had to fly to 4 different sites across the world, across the U.S. They gave me a big desk, and I would get 2 airplane seats, one for me and one for my disc, because you did everything at home office and you had to fly the disc with you on an airplane, like guard it with your life. There was no like FedEx or, anything like UPS. And right. I would take the disc with me, and I'd go to the computer in Atlanta, and I'd put the disc in and make it work. And then I'd go to Los Angeles. I'd go to Clark, New Jersey, and me and my disc. And the disc was like 15 pounds.
It wasn't a floppy disk yet.
But that's where it was always me by myself. Yeah. So, that what it taught me was that, hey, I got the skills to try to figure it out, take risks, don't be afraid, and if you need help, ask. And I was always surrounded by people that were trying to help me because they didn't have anybody else to solve the problem or willing to take the risk. And, I found for me very early, the most rewarding things that I ever experienced were the things that I accomplished where I took a risk.
Totally.
And it was me solving it with the help from others. And there's so much personal satisfaction and joy that comes from that. It's not easy. I mean, there were nights where I'm like, why did I do this? How dumb can I be? Why do you just take a piece of cake job? And I'm flying all over the place and I'm doing all these different things, and it was fun. But then Cigna, when they merged Connecticut General 9A, about 4 years after the merger, I was in an area and we had to downsize. So this is my first experience in corporate downsizing. And my manager at the time, who's very good friends with me, played on the softball team together and basketball and stuff with the company programs. He had to make a choice between me and my best friend. And my best friend was like this database administrator who's very, very good at that stuff. And I'm the one that wanted to just fix problems and be an entrepreneur. And, I didn't want to be the round peg in a round hole. That's not me. So we had a long conversation. I said, keep Tom, and I'll downsize me, whatever you need to do, I'll find something else. So for 3 months, I sat on the bench while they were, giving me a chance to look for another job and stuff. And while I was looking for another job, another area in Cigna was shorthanded, and I volunteered to work 20 hours overtime. So while I was downsized, I was working 20 hours for 3 months during the summer for somebody else to help them solve their problems. And so that's kind of who I am. I just, instead of just accepting my fate, I found ways to change the situation. And so while I was working now, getting paid 40 hours a week to sit on the bench, I'm working my tail off 60 hours over, or 20 hours overtime, and looking for a new job. So I took the package, went to PSFS, which was a bank in Philadelphia, and I was there 1 month. And the person who hired me put me in my first technical manager role, and I was very excited. And I mean, my salary at that time, I jumped from like $32,000 to $42,000 with a $10,000 signing bonus. That was like unheard of. I was like, wow, I'm really special. This is great. And I get there after 1 month, and he says, "But I got bad news. We decided to outsource all of our technology to EDS, which is a company that does the outsourcing. And so you're the last one in, first one out." And I went home, and this is like 4 months after I just got married to your mom, Marisa, and I'm like, I just lost my job again. Here I am thinking I'm the greatest thing since sliced bread, taking on all these challenges and stuff, and I'm a factor of the situation. Nothing personal, just a factor of the situation. And that happens. And so I lost sleep, and I thought about it. When I went the next day, he said, "You're going to pack up your stuff. Maybe Cigna could take you back." I said, "No, I have an idea. Nobody really knows me at PSFS. The new company, you're going to need a liaison to help them figure out what the outsourcing is, what needs to be done. I like challenges. Let me do that." So he said, "Oh, that's an interesting idea." He said, "Let me talk to his boss." He did. He came back the next day and said, "We love the idea. We want you to stay." I said, "Good. That's going to cost you a $10,000 retention bonus." And he bought it.
That's amazing.
So, at that point in my career, I found out that don't let the situation dictate your circumstances or what you're going to do. And actually, years later, I read a book that really helped crystallize that when I was in executive school. And it said, it's not what happens to you, it's how you respond to it.
Mm-hmm. Always.
And that became one of my Buddhisms, which, I'll talk about later. They're little snippets of things quotes that people say or things that I think about. And they're like little phrases that say, okay, it jogs me to say, it keeps me grounded. It's like not personal values, but keeps me grounded on how you deal with certain situations, et cetera. And Absolutely. So that was one of my first Buddhisms. It's not what happens to you, it's how you respond to it. And, whether you're in your private business or you work for somebody or you're, no matter what you do, and no matter what happens in your personal life or professional life, you just got to dust yourself, pick yourself back up and try to figure it out, because guess what? Nobody else is going to do it for you.
Well, I think that's the ticket, because a lot of people are comfortable playing small and they do just want to clock in and clock out. And I think all entrepreneurs at some point have, or maybe multiple points, have those conversations in the house of like, damn, maybe I should have just put in my ticket, grabbed it at the end of the day, and continued to work up and work for others and just figure it out that way. But there is sometimes that resistance to wanting to play small. And if you do have that little bit of fire in you and you're like, no, let's take a risk, let's see where it goes. Like, I think most of us will go through a pivot point at some point where we decide to just walk in the room, claim it, and go until we make it. And if we don't make it, if you have that entrepreneurial spirit, you're going to figure out another room to walk into and figure out how to make it work. So I love that your story involved so much, one, self-awareness of what you enjoyed and loved along the way, because how easily for you to just, yep, okay, let me pack up my stuff and just go and try and figure out the next thing, or get nervous and say, man, I just got married. I just lost my job. Like, I know that you guys had moved into a home not so shortly out there when we were doing like remodels and stuff, and just said, well, what's the easiest, fastest way out of this uncomfortable zone? And sometimes that's where the discomfort is actually our call to find what lies ahead for us and to remain open and be in that uncomfortable space, whether it's in a work environment, whether it's with a relationship, whether it's with a career, whether it's with finances, whether it's in personal growth and hobby development. Like, those places are the places that really can leave us clues on where we're being called to go, where our heart's like driving us to be. And it's finding that beautiful space between ambition and authenticity that really helps you continue to take a step forward in a direction that feels, while it may be risky, that feels really exciting and lights you up.
It does. The other important point for this is there's a lot of people that can't find that way. They just can't find the way out. They struggle. My point is I'm lucky enough because I have the right, inner workings, the confidence, the training because of my early years of tackling tough things to do that. Other people can't. And they don't know how to get their way out of it. The point is find somebody that are like me or you and Sarah, because I do a lot of coaching and I try to help people. Those people that struggle, sometimes they just don't know how to get out. And the best thing to do is to seek help and find people that can talk to you and encourage you and support you and help, through their experience, guide ways to improve their situation. Because not everybody may have that talent. They have different talents and different skills. And this might just be an aspect they can't find their way out of.
Well, I think, Sarah, you could speak to this so much because, you have that heart and fire, but both of us have multitudes of coaches.
Oh my gosh. I think it's one of the greatest gifts when it comes to understanding that we don't have it all together, and that people, especially when it comes to a coach, they can see something that's different than we may be able to see. They can see a neutral perspective a lot of times, and if they have your best interest in mind, they're only going to typically call that up and really empower you to be able to see that. So as you were talking, it made me think about because I would imagine, I was just putting myself in your shoes of in my early 20s and trying to figure it out, in early marriage and trying to rise yourself up. I just know for myself, like you said, I had no freaking clue who I was in my early 20s. I had it just was all about proving myself, right? And finding what worked and what didn't work and trying to build this quote unquote empire for myself. And so I'm just curious, what evolved for you from the ambition side of things? And then also, how did you then lean into the authentic version of yourself as you continue to climb this ladder, quote unquote, within this corporate world? Because we haven't even got to the full story of you leading hundreds of people and dealing with thousands of millions of dollars, So it's what was the shift of that when you started to see, yes, the ambition for success, along with putting your true authentic self into that? Yeah. If you could dive into that a little bit.
That's a great question. So I did that 8 months of successful outsourcing role, and I was the first person they let go and collected my little bonus. And then I struggled to find a job, but I had enough skills that a company called Alicode, which is down in Wilmington, Delaware, wanted to bring me on as a lead consultant for work they were doing that I was very familiar with in a technology business. So they hired me as an independent consultant. Now, this is the first time I'm working for myself. Just, in my own business, I'm a 1099 employee for them. And I'm leading both employees of the company and other consultants that they hired to bring in this new claim system. And I had no experience in claim systems, but I figured it out. I spent a lot of time, listening to people, which is, I think, is one of the most important skills that every person needs to have. And it's also listening for understanding, not just listening, trying to figure things out and trying to understand. I also had a good process background, like a process engineering background. And that's where I always wanted to fix something. So if something was broken, I wanted to fix it. And so I did that for about 18 months. It was an hour-and-a-half drive one way to get to work and then get to back, again, as a young married couple. And I decided that the risk of doing this thing, so I have no medical benefits, things like that. And, you're making really good money as a 1099, but now you have a wife, and then Marisa was born, and, okay, I got to get back into the corporate world because I being an entrepreneur, I didn't know what I wanted to run myself or start, but I knew that I could still be successful in the corporate world, just being me, my authentic self. Because no matter what company I was at, whether it was INA, Cigna, or PSFS, or as an independent consultant at Alico, there's so many things that are never working correctly, and there are always challenges, and there's always something new to do, and automation was still coming out, and people still had all these manual processes and looking for technology solutions. And so that was the bridge that said, Bud, be the person that solves those things. Be the entrepreneur in the business world of where you could help come with, it doesn't have to be my own ideas, come up with ideas, listen, learn, figure out where we have the best opportunity to spend some money to automate something to make the company more successful. And that's what launched my leadership career. So when I was doing that down in the companies, Cigna kind of said, we want you back. So they hired me back as a consultant, and then 6 months later put me in a manager job. And I'm only in a manager job for a couple of months, and they said, oh, now we're going to close down all of our offices in South Jersey, and we're going to move to a new building called 2 Liberty Place, which is like the second tallest building in Philadelphia. And we want you to just do your day job, but we want you to lead the consolidation efforts of all of our South Jersey offices in there. Be the point person. So it was nothing to do with technology. It's logistics management. Right. And now I got a chance to experience something completely different outside of like claim systems and sales systems and stuff like that. Now I'm doing a logistics management problem. And the hardest thing is everybody wanted to have a window seat. And everybody at the office wanted a bigger office.
Want the better view.
And a better view, exactly. Because only three of the sides of the building had a view. The other side had the other building.
That's amazing.
Oh my God! All of a sudden now, I got my experience. What it's really like in a political environment in the corporate world. I mean, people were like offering me anything and everything to get the best window view and the nicest office, and another learning experience. Something that I ended up finding out I did have to volunteer. People volunteering me all the time.
I think to just pause for a moment and go back to that, I think that's a really important point, because oftentimes we feel like we have to be the starter of something in order to be a leader. But you can be a leader in a team and still create opportunities for growth or bring opportunities for assistance and evolution of systems and procedures and evolution for development, instead of just sitting there and doing your job and going home at the end of the day. Like, there's nothing wrong with either or, but I think people do get locked up, especially in our field. Like, people sometimes, and Sarah has talked about this difference between being an associate doctor on a team versus being the business owner. And like, both have very distinct roles and jobs, but both can be extremely satisfying and create opportunities for leadership, for development, for team management, for office management. In fact, there may even be more development for an associate who comes in, especially if an owner doctor or a business owner would like to spend more time outside of the business. That person can really step up into a role and get called into a space where maybe they haven't explored, but have a little bit of that heart and fire for being there. And so just to even hear you talk about that and share that, I think that is something that gets people caught up in thinking that leadership needs to look a certain way, and it doesn't have to still be extremely fulfilling.
That's so true. So right after I did that, I was a manager in an area that I was actually a customer facing area. It was like data analysis. It was the early days of AI. I mean, seriously, the birthplace of AI. We had a data warehouse and we wrote computer systems and solved problems so that people could figure out where all their workers' compensation claims are coming from and why. So I work with loss control and I work with loss prevention. And, we would take a look at why there's so many people getting hurt in certain type of plants that had our workers' comp insurance, and what type of injuries and illnesses were they getting, and then sending people out to figure out how they could improve their business so they didn't have to keep on having their insurance rate rise. And that was one of the most critical things I learned, because my boss was put on a task force. He was a vice president, and he would always call me from the little mini conference rooms and say, Bud, they don't understand what's going on in this company. Write a couple of reports with your staff and tell us what's going on. So I would do all this work and I bring it over to him. And all these executives are talking about, we got to do this for the customer. We got to do that for the customer. And I was sitting back and I said to my boss, they don't know what they're talking about. And the leader of the conference heard me. And he goes, Mr. Bauman, perhaps you'd like to enlighten us all about what our customers really want. And he said, go ahead, stand in the middle room and tell us. And I told everybody, they asked me who I was and what I do, and nobody knew me. I was just a manager at the time, a manager level. And here I am with all these senior vice presidents and stuff. And I said, I work with your customers every day. I said, and everything you're describing is not what they want. I said, because they call me, because, I charge them for my time and my staff's time to tell them what's going on in their plants or their business, et cetera, and why they're having so many injuries and illnesses and that, and claims. And this is what they want. And I told them about it. And that launched my career trajectory, because what I said to them was like, you have to listen to your customers. And they're like, wow. So that became one of my Buddhisms. And then you have to listen to your customers. What do your customers want? You can't understand what your customers want by sitting in a room of people that never talk to customers.
Right.
You got to be out there, business facing. And it's not just serve your customer. When your customer comes in, you got to ask them, well, why do you want this? What's important to you? Both of you guys do that in your value, in your process as doctors, because you have to understand what the pain is. Mm-hmm. And then it's not just the pain, because Marisa, as you said many times, which I always smiled about, is the pain where you're experiencing it may not be the root cause of it.
Sure.
And you actually, both of you in your world, go down and try to diagnose it. It's the same thing about running your business. When you're running your business, your customers come in, you got to try to also not experience what their pain is, but what do they want to get out of life? What do they want to do when you fix this pain? What's that stopping him from doing or preventing him from doing it? So you can help here. They're not just physical aspects, but their mental aspects and the other piece. And your customers will remain loyal with that. They'll always recommend you to somebody else, because you're not just servicing them. You're truly understanding who they are, what they need, and what gives them joy in life, and helping them get back to that.
Absolutely.
And that's why there's so much similarities to your world and the way I approach the business side of things with that. What does your customers need? That was an aha moment for me.
I love how you said, and I like, just to summarize it, it's like listening to understand versus trying to listen for what you want to hear. Right. Like, what a beautiful gift that you get to be able to do that in any industry, like in any form of business and leadership. It's like you're putting the person in front of you first, along with obviously having a standard of process and just what you're doing within your business. But at the same time, it's like you're putting the customer as a priority. And I mean, I know if anytime I walk into a place where the customer is a priority, you feel that, and you know that that's an intention comparable to if it's not, and they just want to put money on the table, or they're just wanting to fulfill a process. So
right.
I love that Buddhism. That's great.
So hold on. You've mentioned a couple times these Buddhisms. Like, give us the goods. What are these Buddhisms?
So they're just, again, like I said, a series of like little slogans or sayings that I ended up capturing them and then using them to get certain points across without having to go through a whole elaborate story.
Okay.
So, listen to your customer, big time one. Mm-hmm. One I used to always use a lot is assume positive intent. Learn, do, master was one of my first ones, because, it goes back to what I said earlier. I get bored very quickly. So when I approached any job, I said, first of all, I got to learn it. Second of all, I got to get to the point where I'm doing it and I do it well. And once you get to doing it well, I started mastering it. So learn, do, master. When I got done to mastering it, okay, time to move on, because I want to do something different. And so, and a lot of times if I left something, I didn't feel I completed my mission or the journey, because I wasn't getting to the point where I was actually doing it or mastering it. So that was another Buddhism. Let me say I have a whole bunch. I got a whole list here, as a matter of fact. Let me see.
Well, let's dive, because success and really like getting bored easily, like it can be its own form of intoxication, right? You're kind of going for that next like dopamine hit and that quick like risk reward system. And so when we're in those environments and we're seeing ourselves starting to become attractive and sought after, like what were things that helped to keep you grounded when everything else around you was starting to pull you in different directions, and maybe testing the way that you would operate with everything else outside of your corporate world success? Because obviously, as someone who's highly sought after, you could not just work those 20 hours of overtime when you're looking for a new job, but how many of us can so easily work over and over and over and over time to try and continue to make that business something else and ignore other facets of our life and then start to lose the part of ourselves that turned us and make us into the person that shows up in those environments?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So if I speed forward, when I took a risk and went on an insurance product development role, and I did that for about 2 years. So I left the technology side of Cigna's healthcare and insurance business and workers' compensation disability and went to the business side. And what we did was, sequestered ourselves for 3 months trying to understand how we could work and merge workers' compensation, healthcare, behavioral health, and disability management all into one single product and offer this, what they call 24-hour coverage. Whether you get hurt on a job or off the job, you're still covered. Because all the insurance industry is fragmented. Everything is separate insurances for all those things, including then life and other things. You have to go to like 8 or 10 different companies to get all those different coverages. Cigna was trying to be, we have it all together. And we did a lot of work on that. When that project got done, my job was cut over again. And I had to find another job either within the company or they're going to give me a package again. And at that point, I had such a good reputation that 5 different areas offered me like assistant vice president or higher jobs in the company to go work for. And so I decided to move us all up to Connecticut. And that's when we moved up to Connecticut. It was you and your sister, Paulina, at the time. Juliana wasn't here yet. And I went up there. And I was sponsored by the CIO of the company and the first female division president in Cigna's 250-year history. At the same time, I was getting my chance to be a divisional CIO at age 33. She was being given the chance of being the first female division president in Cigna's 250-year history. And we connected. She was fantastic. And I learned so much from her. She was the first woman that I worked for. Up until then, technology was mostly a man's world. And now here I am reporting directly to a division president who I thought was just brilliant. And I admired her and how she climbed the ladder. And she became one of my early mentors. But together, those two put their head together and said, besides blood moving, have a young family, put in as a young age, a very high senior level position. We're going to send them to executive development school up in Massachusetts, since it's not too far from Connecticut. So I literally went on a year-long program where you had to read like 40 books in 40 weeks and go to a place called Babson College every 6 weeks for 2 or 3 days and discuss leadership and versus management. And one of the 2 things that I told you this the other day, when we were briefing, the 2 things they made you do first was write a 2-page story about who you are. Who is Bud Bauman? And they, my nickname was the Bud Man, so they always shortened it. Who's the Bud Man? And that stuck with me for a long time. The second thing they made you do was to sit back and write, what are your personal values? As you just asked the question, it's exactly that. What are the things that guide you in your decision-making process? What are the things that are most important to you that any decision or any direction you're going to choose guides that direction? And so it took me a long time to think through that. It was a week project, and then you had to come present it to the rest of the class, which was about 25 people, and do it in front of them and explain why. So here's my 5 personal values. And guess what? They haven't changed. They haven't changed since 1995. They've remained my personal values for life. And part of it is because I really put a lot of thought process into it. And every time I turn around, it's still the 5 most important things. First is my family. Family is the most important thing to me. And so when I start thinking about what grounds me, the first thing I say is, what's the impact to my family? The second one is integrity. And, the quick thing about integrity is there's 2 aspects of it. One, you can't lose your integrity. You can only give it away. And 2, focus on doing the right thing and do it right. So both of those, I had a little twist to it, like not just the beginning part. The third thing was, and it goes back to who I am, I always wanted to make a difference or make a significant contribution. So that became 3. 4 was continuous learning. Like I get bored. I want to move on and do different things. And I get excited about learning new things. And the funny thing is, now in a retirement age, I watch more of the History Channel than I ever seen in my life. That was a lost opportunity. I should have watched the History Channel a lot more during the age, because I find a lot of those shows so fascinating. And it gives me a different perspective of when they take a look at ancient cultures and history and all the great leaders in the world. And I should have known that because one of my mentor, Fran Newman, who was their first division president, she had told me what one of her most inspiring books that she ever read was Patton. And so at that time, I was never much of a book reader. I went and bought the movie and I watched the movie. I talked to her about it.
Amazing.
And the last one was have fun. Mm. You're only put on this earth for a short period of time, and you can drown in a whole lot of things that can happen to you, your challenges in life and your circumstances. But you have to make sure that you are trying to enjoy your time on this earth because it's the only time you have.
Totally.
And you have to make time for it. And you have to make time for it with your family. Like, if you think about everything I said, I have fun continuously learning. I have fun making a big difference. I have fun making sure that I keep my integrity and maintain it. And I have fun with my family. So that last one became so true. And now that I'm retired, it's up to number 3. So it's still family, it's integrity, it's now having fun. Forget about the significant differences in continuous learning outside of the history channel.
Like, I'm done.
So I only changed the order, but kept the same 5.
A valuable lesson indeed.
So there are the things I guide myself. If I want to look for a new job, or I want to take a new risk, or I'm going to buy a new home, or I'm thinking about a car or making an investment, I sit there and think about those personal values and say, is anything going to touch those? And if it is, where's the risk?
Right. So what was an example of a time where your values were the most tested they had ever been, and how did you respond?
I'll give you one from the corporate world. So the same person I was telling you about, her name was Francine Newman, first division president. She ran the reinsurance business at Cigna. I was put in there as my first leadership development program. And after a year and a half, I was nailing the job. She was a tremendous mentor. I had other people that were trying to make sure that I succeeded as well. And after a year and a half, they wanted to, and don't forget, to take that job, I had to move your mom, who had a strong family connection tie in Westmont, New Jersey with the pasta business. I had to move her away from her family. I had to move myself away from the family, you and Polina away from grandma and grandpa, and go up and start a new life in Connecticut, not South Jersey where we lived. So that was a difficult decision. But now after a year and a half, they said, Bud, you're doing really well. We want you to leave. We want you to come back to Philly. You got a different, bigger, better job. And so I was sitting there going, wow, this is a big promotion. I'm going to go from assistant vice president to vice president, more responsibility, more people leadership. And, I talked to Fran. I talked to my CIO, Ray, who was pulling me and said, come on, we need you. And I sat back and go, well, wait a minute. Fran Newman and Ray just invested a year of me going and graduating from this executive leadership development program. I just got the house set up the way we liked it. We're just kind of acclimating ourselves to being our own family unit, which was very important to us, something that you're experiencing now, Marisa, by, moving to where you're at. You followed your heart, and so I said, I'm following my heart. Things are just starting to get settled with me and your mom and being away and from family and learning how to deal with that. And now they want to move me back. And yet Fran and Ray made this investment in me, and I'm still learning. I'm not doing. And I felt like, well, it'd be great to take this job. I didn't pay them back for the investment they made in me. So I went into Fran Newman's and told her, Fran Newman's office, I said, I'm turning it down. I said, you devoted so much to my learning that I want to make sure that I stay here for the 3-year commitment and I help you be successful in what you're doing, because now I could take all the things I just learned and make your business more successful from my responsibility. So I turned it down. And people outside and everyone's like, you're nuts, you're crazy. But it was because my personal values, my family, my integrity came through loud and clear, that how could I just leave this woman after a year, who they spent almost a year finding me. They had interviewed like 11 candidates over the course of time and settled on me. How could I do that to a business and to a woman who's in her first career, big role like that, who was doing so much for me? So I passed it up and I stayed there. And yet, it was a tough decision because your grandparents all wanted us to move back. The corporation wanted me to move back, but my integrity, was stopping me. And I still wanted to do more about experience that family life away. And I didn't do anything significant. The only thing significant was they invested in me and I didn't invest and do anything to help them. So that was that was a really, really hard decision on all those fronts. And yet it still paid off, because a year and a half later, when we were everything that I put together a strategy, I built a new IT team for her. We transitioned from an operating system called OS2 to Microsoft. That's when Microsoft came out. So again, dating myself, we actually got Windows. Everybody's very excited. Wow. It was the advent of the internet. I helped that division get the internet into their business by setting up one PC where everybody shared and went on the internet to surf the internet. It was such a fun time. And it really taught me a lot about, sometimes you have to think about a broader spectrum and others, the impact of others. And, if somebody really helps you along the way, how can you abandon them right away and make them start over when they invested so much in you? And they were like the critical thought processes for me to say, I'm not finished yet, and I'm not starting a new journey until I give back. And by the way, that giving back really hung true, because fast forward, when I went to Horizon Blue Cross and Blue Shield, they ran this Susan G. Komen event, Breast Cancer for a Cure, and it was a golf event. And my boss and one of his peers were the sponsors of it. And, our mom passed away with ovarian cancer. So, I said, you know what? I haven't done the same thing that Fran and other people have done for me in my career, give back. So for 10 years, I was, the man behind the scenes of making that Golf for a Cure for Susan G. Komen work. Over that period of time, we raised on average $200,000 a year for one golf event over a 10-year period of time, almost $2 million. The last 2 years, I did it as the executive sponsor because my boss retired and I was the executive sponsor. And I can't tell you how rewarding that was to do something like that for charity, to raise, 1.8 to $2.0 million over 10 years to give back. And, it was very inspiring. It was very fulfilling because, again, a significant accomplishment to be able to help raise those kind of funds to help find a cure for breast cancer.
I think it's amazing for when I was hearing you talk about the decision to be able to plant your family and just like hone in on that and to follow your heart. It's really easy. At least I've seen this, Marisa, and I know you've watched this too, especially in our industry. It's like when you have one thing going on, it's like if you're not really confident in yourself or like what those values are, it's really easy to like get whiplash and get blown in the wind and like take the next shiny thing that's either going to make you more money or feel like you're creating more success in your life. And then along with what you potentially, all the noise of the voices that are in your world, whether that be your parents, whether that be your mentors, whether that be coaches in your world, instead of actually being like, what is it that I desire? What is it that I feel very drawn to, and being led by those like solid values in your life, the integrity that like drives your life. So can you speak to that really quick for me, to the place of like, what were some of the voices that were telling you that you were a fool for making that decision or potentially not making the smartest decision? And how did you like navigate those voices and be able to then obviously celebrate them later on to be able to see obviously the life that you then led?
Sure. Well, first of all, you have the financial aspect, because it was a huge promotion where you're getting not only increased salary, but increased bonus and increased stock retention. Mm-hmm. So you have to think about, to your point, what you just said is a financial impact right away to any kind of promotion or new business opportunity. The second thing is then you go back to, okay, great, you have your family members. I mean, at that time, I think, my wife was still missing the opportunity to go back and be with her family. Our parents are like, move back. My mother had ovarian cancer at the time, and she felt like we took the kids away from her. Yeah. But I said, it won't be that much longer. Luckily, she lived 8 years. So I got a chance to bring the kids back and got to see them. But that was gut wrenching. Yeah. Am I having the opportunity, taking the opportunity away from my mother to be able to experience her grandchildren while she's experiencing such a traumatic and eventually life-ending sickness. And then you have all your peers and stuff going, oh, you got to take it, you're going to the next step and the next level. What are you, crazy? All that stuff. But at the end of the day, it's like what you said and what your podcast is all about. It's like following your heart. How do you feel? What's driving you? And again, as I weighed it against my personal values, I didn't feel like I was done learning. And I felt like if I just left, I'm losing the opportunity of, completing the mission that I signed up for, which goes back to get my integrity. It was told, it was like, after 3 years, we'll find you a bigger, better job, except that bigger, better job came up after a year and a half because somebody else had left and they wanted to move me into it right away. But I didn't feel I was ready. And again, I thought that this would still bring our family closer together because now we're our unit by ourselves, not every weekend. And guess what? The family changed. The family came up and visited us like every 2 weeks. Let them adapt a little bit and come up and visit and stuff like that. And, it's not goodbye. It's just a different experience, and by the way, cell phones still didn't exist back then. We're talking 92, 93. Like I had a big walkie-talkie and a pager. Because of technology, there was no cell phone.
No FaceTime, no Zoom meetings.
I got a beeper and I had to call up the hotline and say, "Okay, what's broken?" and to go come in the business and fix it. There wasn't even any remote dial-in and all that stuff. So it was a different world, which is always different circumstances. So you have to always put it in context. But Sarah, again, it goes back to who I am and what's important to me and what did I think the risk and rewards are. And what's the impacts of those? And, when I thought about it from that end, there's always pros and cons, but I just felt like it wasn't time. In my heart, I felt it wasn't time to take it. And guess what? After that 3 years, I got a different and a better opportunity and to start in an organization called, when we were trying to get that product development stuff that I told you about, bringing workers' comp. Well, Cigna actually tried to do it, and we did it for about 3 years. And while I was in there doing that job, I got recognized by Computer World as being one of the top 25 IT people in the country to watch in their article in 1998. So that choice that I made to stay led to a different opportunity a year and a half later that I had a whole different set of challenges and all, starting a new business with the Cigna Corporation. And I got recognized because of that executive program that I was at. I met the editor-in-chief of Computer World, and we stayed in touch. I did some very unique things. And not only was I doing that job, but Cigna stretched me and said, "Hey, we also need help on the business side of short-term disability." So they made me vice president of disability as well, working with two other wonderful peers, trying to bring in short-term disability into Cigna Corporation, not just long-term disability. So now I'm doing two roles, move my family back to Philadelphia, and it ended up being recognized nationally in a Computer World article. And so, it's one of those great recognitions that, by the way, is also a double-edged sword because all of a sudden now, who are you? You're special, and you go through a whole other series of, you get some people are happy for you and some people are jealous of you. That was a whole other different life experience I could tell you about. But to your point, the consequences of me and the outcome of me deciding to stay turned into a different opportunity that eventually I got recognized by the top computer magazine, tech magazine in the country as one of the top 25 IT people to watch. Jeffrey Bezos was in that article with me. You know where he ended up. Two different worlds. I should have went left with him.
Well, as you continue to go up and you are in more of these VP important roles, like now you are responsible for more than just yourself in the workplace, and you are working with teams and managing other people and cutting even just through the corporate jargon. Like there is a hard reality of like, not only are you responsible for them because you're responsible for your job and you need your team to be supporting and doing what they need to do, but now you're responsible for other people's livelihoods. You're responsible for their growth. You're responsible for their expectations. And so you're also responsible for the messy humanity that shows up in multitudes of different personalities and people that come to work for you and with you each and every day. So how has your leadership style evolved from, learning from others to then having to also teach others while also holding expectations and standards for people and just leading them, the challenges and the motivations of leading and working with others in that role?
Yeah, that's a really great point, Marisa. It's It's a huge transition. It's not something that just happens overnight because, a lot of the things I talked about were things I did for myself and I focused on them. But all along the way, I'm leading teams. Like the first divisional role I had was about 30 some people. The first manager job I had was about 10 or 15. But then when I went on to that entrepreneurial world at Cigna, it ended up being about 100. And then I took another job in the corporate area where they gave me responsibility for merging 3 corporate IT units together, HR, finance, and legal. And each one of those groups had about 50 or so people, and I had to bring them together. And then I got another organization with like 400 people when I ran the life and disability division as well as the corporate areas. And then then all of a sudden the company was going through, well, it's cheaper if we outsource to India or Canada. And now I have to face the fact that how do I let 250 to 350 people go and the impact of their lives? And so there's different skill sets. You have the things that you can lead on yourself, but now instead of your personal values, you got to start thinking about what your leadership values are. And what does that mean for you? And, what's your guiding compass for when you're managing people? Mm-hmm. And how are you going to help them learn and grow? And that's a whole set of different kind of questions and things to think about. I did that leadership style development in that executive training class, but didn't have to pull it out for like 3 or 4 more years. And it really was a set of like 5 to 7 guiding principles on what's my leadership style and what does that look like? And what is it that I want for the outcome of the things I lead? And some of the important things are like, remember, everybody's human. That was one of my other Buddhisms. Everybody's human. Everybody's got a life. There's impacts. And there are certain things that as a leader, you got to step back and say, they are making their choices and you're making yours. And that's a whole other set of things because not everybody's going to want to work hard. Not everybody looks at it the same way you and Dr. Sarah do. It's your business and you're growing and running it. They may be just looking for a job because it's their second income sustaining their family. And so one of the most important things about leadership is that understanding the human quality of people. What is it that they want out of life? And you may need people that just are looking for the second job and are reliable, dependable. And you might be looking at it, hey, I might need some different talent and skill set to do other things in your practice. And the most important thing that you have to do when you're leading any business or running any job or any project is what is it that you need? And you as a leader have to understand that first. What is it that you need to be successful? And then from there, then you decide, okay, how do I fill out my team? How do I mesh the styles of the personalities? How do I keep them engaged? What is it? Another thing, you have to understand what drives them. What is it important to them? What are they seeking? Are they people like me that want to always do something new and different? Are these people that want to be steady eddies and they just want to come in and do their job because they don't like change, but yet they can be very reliable? And so they're one of like 1 to 3 of the most important things that you have to understand when starting a business and then growing a business and running a business and eventually maybe selling off the business. So it's a whole different set of principles and things to think about to make you a more effective leader. And then you apply your personal values to your leadership style to make it whole.
What would you finish this sentence with? The greatest mistake new leaders make is believing that
they have all the answers.
So good. There is such a I love how you distinguished personal values versus leadership values, because we can all have our personal values. But yes, when you are in a managerial, a leadership, an ownership role in a business, in an entrepreneur world, in a corporate world, like there are decisions you have to make, and you can keep your personal values at heart, but sometimes you are going to be faced with challenges and obstacles and opportunities for decision making that need to happen based off of what the rhythm of that current business and environment around that business is. And so when you're in that world, like the landscape continues to change and evolve, but there are principles, there are values that continue to stay the same. So if you are orchestrating your leadership now? If you are in a position, whether you're owning a business, whether an individual is climbing a corporate ladder, whether they're just starting their entrepreneurial journey, where would you advise people to invest more of themselves? Where would you advise people to like spend time with energy in places versus in fear or worry? Like, what kind of things would you say are timeless that could affect any leader in any position that is continuing to grow and evolve?
Yeah. So I want to tell a quick story. It's about you, Marisa. The
Oh,
quick answer to the quick answer to your question is, when you want to do something, no matter what it is, you got to be there now. And actually the saying is be here now. And it's a kind of a slogan from this leadership development group called Sendelani. The big corporate kind of organizational change management experts and all. And that's kind of their motto, be here now. Like, you can't lead somebody or work with somebody if they're in your office and, you're thinking about what your next thing to do is, and they're talking about their personal challenges or their work challenges and all. You have to be there now. So if you're going to invest something, whether you're going to be building a home or, taking care of a child and running a business, you have to, whatever aspect you're dealing with, you have to be there now, because your mind and your body can't handle all that stuff at the same time when you're trying to solve what your specific point of focus should be at that moment. And people lose sight of that and then they're not successful. So be here now, wherever it is, be there now. Heart, mind, soul, body. It's very difficult, but it's so important. And so here's a story I have to tell you about. This goes back to the personal values and family. And I had talked about that, but until this incident happened, I really truly didn't understand it until you made it happen for me. So I was climbing the corporate ladder. We lived in our Cherry Hill home, the bigger state home. And, you were at, I think, what was the name of the school? Bell School, your middle school?
Beck Middle School?
Beck School, middle school. And you had asked me, because I was still working basically every week of my life, I worked 60 hours or more. And I still tried to find time for family and all. And you had asked me to go to a science fair for you because I really hadn't done too much school stuff with you. And I said, sure, I'll go. Just tell me where it is and when it is. And you told me the date and all. And like at 5:00 at night, I'm working in Philadelphia. Your mom calls me and says, you're supposed to be taking your daughter to the science fair. She asked you to go. I said, forgot. So I asked your mom to take you there, drop you off. I'll leave right now from work and I'll get there. I'll be a few minutes late. So she did. And I got there. And the first thing I did, again, no cell phones. When I walked into your school, there's a bank of telephones there, payphones. And I dialed into the 800 number to listen to my voicemails in case I missed something from work. And I'm on the phone late and you come walking out and you said, Papa, I thought you were going to participate with me in this. Mm-hmm. And the look on your face was priceless. I mean, I literally, I don't know if I deleted the voice. I just literally put the phone down and I walked into the room, which was your cafeteria / gymnasium mixture. And it was a science fair. And so the first thing we did was we went to this one station where you held me you held my hand and you walked me over there and I'm participating. I'm like, I'm thinking, okay, I got to be here now. Forget about everything else, all the other distractions. And we walked up to this place where they had like Chip Ahoy cookies. And the idea was what they're asking the kids from the science fairs, take a look at the cookie and use your imagination. And you stunned me with this. You pulled out the chocolate chip cookies and they said, Marisa, what do you see? And you said, I see the world. Mm. And I see the world and I'm going to imagine that all the chocolate chips are diamond mines. And with all those chocolate chips, I can not only have enough money when I mine those diamonds to take care of myself and my family, but I could solve world hunger. I mean, I would have missed that moment had I stayed on the phone and not participated. And it wouldn't have shown me at that moment how brilliant you can be with your imagination. And it was amazing. The next thing was even better. Because what happened was that because, I was your dad and there was only a certain amount of parents there, they said, okay, we're going to split up the groups of like people, like 7 or 8 people on a team. And everybody's picking their teams. And since you were a new student and there were other new students, like everybody on our team were the students that weren't picked. And because all of you were new and all of you were different. There was a girl that was a Chinese girl. There was an Indian girl. There was a black boy and a couple of white boys and you. And the task was, okay, you got to make you get 2 pieces of paper, a pencil, a little notepad, and a ruler. And what you had to do is you had to make paper planes, fly them, record the distance, and whoever at the end of the exercise was like 15 minutes, whoever had flown the longest distance with your 2 paper planes would win the science fair. And so as a sponsor, I was watching all the other sponsors and they were directing the kids and stuff like that. And one of the things that I learned from my leadership is once you get the team, let them find out who each other are, what their strengths are, and then get out of the way.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Like, and so you said, I'll be the leader. And I was like, okay,
noted.
That's my girl. And then you started talking to your classmates. First of all, you were all introducing yourselves because you really didn't know everybody because it's the whole school. It's not everybody in your immediate class. And then you said, okay, you said, how should we do this? What's their strengths? And the 2 boys go, we make paper planes all the time. The teacher gets mad at we throw it, so we can make the planes. The one black boy says, I'll throw them. I says, I love to throw stuff all the time. I'm a basketball player. So he said, I'll throw them. I can throw those planes as farther than anybody. And the one Chinese girl goes, you know what? I like math. So I'll do all the adding and all, and I'll use the ruler to measure the stuff, etc. And the one Indian girl goes, okay, so I'll count. I'll try to help you measure. So everybody like had a role. And so everybody got busy. And I just sat back. I was like watching this stuff and watching you kind of like try to orchestrate it. And even you were like just making sure, hey, how the plane's going. And you were just guiding people, which you never had any leadership. It was a fascinating thing to experience. Well, guess what? You guys won. You kicked butt. You know why? Because the one girl that had the ruler figured out that the blocks on the school, the tire pile, were exactly 12 inches. So when the kids started playing, everybody was sitting there flipping the ruler one at a time. Your Indian girl was walking, counting the blocks because the other girl figured out they were exactly 12 and said, 30 blocks, 20 blocks, and just kind of amongst ourselves. You guys blew the whole thing away. The boys knew how to throw the airplane. It was great. The other airplanes were the best paper airplanes I ever saw. And when it was the misfits of nobody knew who you were and all, you guys won that science fair for that project that was. And it was just fascinating to watch. And guess what? Not only did I experience a personal joy of knowing that I was there now and I witnessed it, but it was one of the best leadership experiences ever to say, okay, great. What drove that is that the team identified what they thought they were good at. Everybody liked the job that we're going to do. Everybody got enthusiastic. They rallied around the cause because it was like no one liked us. Nobody knew us. We were different. And the whole thing about now all the diversity stuff and all, I got a chance to experiencing that like in 1998 with the way that whole team came together. It's something I will never forget in my lifetime. And it went back to my personal values and my family being most important and being present. And that's basically what be here now means. Be present. And to me, that kind of sums up your question. The most important thing about whatever you want to do is be there. Don't do it half-heartedly. Be there, immerse yourself, and then make a difference and learn and all that other stuff. And that's what you taught me, because I almost missed that opportunity by focusing on the wrong thing, which was not spending time with you that I promised, but trying to just go back to work and climbing the ladder and be successful. Guess what? I could turn that off for that moment, that day, and be there with you.
Yeah, that's amazing. I don't really recall that experience, which is hilarious, but I definitely recall an emotional response of like, I know that my family works hard, but yes, like I love their presence and existence in my life. And I think we could all take a moment of also like learning from children, because we haven't necessarily been told what we're supposed to do or supposed to look like or supposed to experience. And you got to watch this organic unfolding of like these little kids leading from their, hearts and their wants and their desires and their strengths and the things that they feel made them who they were in the most raw, unfiltered way, come together and do something pretty awesome. And I feel that because even just for myself and knowing a little bit more about my energy and my human design, like I am more of that kind of like, let's connect all the dots and bring it together. Who brings what to the table and how can we maximize what that experience is? So it's neat to hear, obviously, the person I am now, probably about the age that you were or close to it, also aging myself like in that situation and watching that happen amongst kids. It's a really cool story. Thank you for sharing.
Well, that ties back to probably the last point about, at the end of the day, everybody struggles with balance, right? Sure. The balance between work, life, family, and anything else that comes this way. And everybody thinks it's like a 50-50 thing. You think about scales. That's not what it is. Mm-hmm. And that's where the whole concept of be there now is. Be here now is, okay, at that point in time, immerse yourself in where you need to be. And it doesn't have to be, well, let me only get 50% of that, because guess what? It's not going to be successful. And life isn't always that. You're going to have a time where you're going to have to focus solely on work. You're going to have to ask your spouse or your significant other or somebody else to do something for you, or a family member or a friend. Hey, please take care of this for me because I got to focus on that. And then at a different time, you can shift gears and hopefully find somebody that you could trust for in your business to say, hey, please, I want to have a child. I want to go expand my business. You got to trust them, and you got to make sure you train them and feel confident and give them the tools that succeed so that you could shift gears and focus on something else and be present there. And that's another whole topic we could talk about. But that's extremely important. And that's the way I would sum this stuff up. With that thought process when you think about be here now.
Right. It's not always about balance. I don't know if there ever really is a balance, but there definitely is a priority. And you can always reorganize what those priorities are. Like right now, have fun is your number 3 compared to it being that beautiful kind of overarching, summary compared to the other 4. So
right.
Thank you guys so much for joining us for another episode of the Heartwork podcast. Papa, Bud man, thank you for sharing so much amazing insight and wisdom into your development and how you cultivated and grew that, and giving us some tactical advice too to continue to help expand on our own lives and to ask us some pretty intense questions about what those things might look like for us and where we can marry a lot of the principles to what we're doing in our day-to-day and show up as better leaders and humans, constantly evaluating what that is. So if you enjoyed our podcast, please like, subscribe, and share. And we will definitely add some links to get in touch with you. So, but if anyone did want to follow up with you and ask any questions or pick your brain, is there a best place for them to reach out?
Yeah, email, or you can find me on LinkedIn.
Perfect. We'll add those to the show notes.
Great. And listen, thank you for Dr. Sarah and Dr. Marisa. One of the best things in life is to take time and reflect back. And so for preparing this, it got a chance for me to sit back and reflect on things. And you can start appreciating yourself when you think about the things you've done and the list of questions you gave me in advance that makes me go back and think about what I did and stuff like that. And there is also joy and fulfillment in doing that piece. So thank you.
It was a treasure. I was literally thinking, man, I think I could listen to you for hours. So it was really fun to hear the story, and you made me tear up. You made me get all like mushy inside. So thank you. It was a beautiful story to be able to hear and unfold what your life looked like. It's amazing.
Well, best wishes with your podcast going forward.
Thank you.